We're recording now.
All right, let's begin our meeting here. This is the meeting of the Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors of January 11th, 2021. Welcome everybody here. The meeting is being held via Zoom because of the COVID-19 pandemic worldwide. Just keep everybody safe. We received a packet in the mail in advance. All board members should have received that sometime earlier or later last week. And let's have a roll call of board members present, followed by staff members and in the public.
Okay. We'll start with a roll call for the board. Brian Noggle.
Present.
Scott Bieber. We did hear from Scott that he'd be coming in by phone, so hopefully he'll be joining us shortly. Dick Bonner.
I am here, but I did not receive a packet.
Oh, no.
But I have it on my computer.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Norma Cusick.
I'm here.
Ted Lyons.
Here.
Kevin Baker.
Present.
Linda Rosenfeld.
Here.
Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Amir Famili.
Present.
Scott Bieber.
Here.
All right. I thought that was you coming in. Welcome, Scott. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, so for staff, we have Solicitor Mike Gall from King's Prize here, and myself, Ed Klein, John Parsons, Chris Mon, Chuck Volk, Susan Sampson, Andrew Moore, Phil DePoe, Lisa Miller, and Todd Marion. So everyone is present. Full house today.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
And public, we have?
Public, we do have Jenny McKenna and Brian Chamberlain from the city of Allentown, and I believe that's it today.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. Review the agenda. Any changes, corrections, additions to the agenda that was published?
No changes to the agenda. However, I will make just a few comments under staff comments regarding the main break at Devonshire in the city of Allentown the last week of the last year. And then I also request an executive session following the close of this meeting to discuss some matters of potential litigation.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the minutes of the December 14th, 2020 board meeting.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If we look at page 2, under Suburban Division, Western Lehigh Service Area, there's a sentence that begins 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line down. I think Mr. DePoe noted that the existing intermunicipal agreement, I should believe the next word is dictates. That's my first idea. My second one is on page 4. Okay, under staff comments, the second paragraph begins, Ms. Gross updated the board on the pandemic response, stating that the staff has postponed the reopening. After those two suggestions, I make a motion we accept the minutes to the meeting of, I'm getting there, December the 14th, 2020.
Second.
A motion made by Dick and seconded by Linda. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe we have one abstention from Scott.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Scott. Okay, at this time, so it's approved. At this time, we open up the floor to any public comments on any items that are not on the agenda. Does the public have any comments?
No, thank you.
Yeah, nothing here.
Okay, thank you both. All right, moving on to action and discussion items, we do have under Finance Administration the union contract and employee manual update. and it's seeking approval. It's the TAN documents that the board members had received in advance, except for Dick.
All right, thanks everyone. I apologize for all the heavy reading over the last week or so. It's a pretty thick document. But I'll try to go through this in kind of the same order that it's listed in the memo so we can follow along. We provided the entire contract for you to look at so you could see all the changes in context with the entire document. And hopefully that was helpful to all of you. Essentially what we have before you today are two items globally. We have an updated collective bargaining agreement between LCA and the Service Employees International Union, SEIU. Their contract expired at the end of 2020, and negotiated for your contract is in front of you for consideration. We also have 3 modifications to the employee manual, which would impact our non-union employees, as well as the SMART group, which is a different union that would be subject to the same terms. So just an overarching comment, a couple overarching comments. Through this negotiation, we were trying to accomplish a couple different things. First of all, where possible, we were attempting to bring the policies that are in place for the SEI group more in line with what's in place for the rest of the organization, and have what we call internally a one LCA approach to certain things. So there are some items in here that are a reflection of simply a change to have the contract reflect what's already in our employee manual, but was not previously reflected in the SEIU contract. And there's several of those items throughout the contract. The other piece that I think is important to note here is that we acquired this contract through the lease transition from the city of Allentown. And in 2013, there was a contract between SEIU and the city of Allentown already in place. And we assumed that contract as part of the lease transition and continued operating under that contract until 2016. When we did the contract negotiation in 2016, we did make some changes to the contract at that point, but essentially we kept the same form and a lot of the language that was in the prior contract in place. So there's a lot of carryover items relating to the city contract with these union employees that carried forward with us for a period of the last 7, almost 8 years. So a lot of the changes that you see in this contract are really our effort to have the contract more accurately reflect LCA's business and LCA's environment and our culture. And so some of the changes may just be wording changes or not really consequential in terms of actions, but they're symbolic in terms of showing that this really reflects LCA's work environment. And you'll see a lot of that throughout. So when we came through to the other side and ended up with the contract that SEIU and LCA were reasonably satisfied with, we put this document together and then also looked at the changes to the employee manual that we thought would sort of round out all of the policy changes that that have been reflected in the process. So just going through the memo sort of sequentially, you'll see that there are a lot of changes throughout the contract, as I mentioned, but I tried to group them into categories. The first category relates to the hours of work, generally speaking, and that really focuses on overtime and how emergency work is handled. So there are a number of changes listed there. A couple that I wanted to highlight is the fact that the prior contract did not really reflect that we have a 24/7 operation. And so there's a lot of changes relating to how our treatment plan operator schedule works with the 12-hour shifts and how the overtime is handled for our treatment plan operators. And then the other piece that I think is important is We had a lot of discussion with the union about how emergency work or overtime work is handled here at LCA, and the needs, kind of special needs of LCA in dealing with emergencies after hours, such as the main break that happened the last week of 2020, when it was pretty much all hands on deck on an almost continuous basis for several days. So some of the things that are listed here as changes reflect that work environment, including the requirement that employees get some rest time after a period of more than 16 hours, working more than 16 hours, or if their emergency work falls in the middle of the night, that doesn't allow them to get rest. And several other items here. I don't want to read the bullet by bullet. I think you've all had a chance to look at them. But wanted to at least kind of give some context for why these changes were recommended and included. The emergency work environment is pretty challenging for our crews. They work in all weather conditions 24/7 when the emergency strikes. So having these provisions, I think, are really important for them. Under the category of benefits, there are several changes listed here, and most of them relate to cost control. So I think there are good cost controls listed here. The health insurance benefits are provided with premiums already predetermined for the next 4 years, and those premium increases are averaging at 4.5% per year, which is a very, very good thing for us, where we've seen our health insurance premiums in other parts of the organization increasing by double-digit increases every year for the last several years. So having that cost control in place is good for us. There's some changes to how the life insurance benefit is provided for employees, and then eliminating that for retirees. It's a small benefit, but it does help with the cost control. And then a little bit more control on how health benefits are provided for retirees. The next section relates to paid.
Lisa, I have a quick question. On health insurance, can I assume that when retirees reach age 65, they will go on Medicare and we will no longer provide health insurance?
That is correct. And in fact, the retiree health care is limited to a 3-year period. So if an employee retires at age 60, they can either get the insurance right away or they can wait a couple of years, but they can only have it from LCA for a period of 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And you're right, after age 65, they're no longer eligible for LCA's retiree health care. For the paid time off, there are several items listed here, and the biggest change, I would say, relates to how sick time is managed. That entire section was completely rewritten, and specifically to reduce the amount of sick time from 18 days down to 16.25 days, and then address how those banked sick time hours are used and paid over a period of time. The sick time is one provision in the contract that's very different from how the rest of LCA operates. For the SEIU employees, they are able to accrue sick time, and that serves as their short-term and long-term disability plan, or really just short-term disability. They do not have short or long-term disability provided by the company, so the sick time is that disability coverage. For non-union employees and the SMART union group, we have just an annual amount of sick time that's available, but that's supplemented by a short-term and a long-term disability insurance program. So it's a little bit different between the two groups. And we've made a lot of modifications to the sick time provision within the SEIU contract to try to manage that a little bit more effectively. One change Under paid time off, I do want to highlight, because it carries over to the employee manual change, relates to the carryover. And we discussed this, I believe, a couple of months ago, how employees can carry over unused vacation time from one year to the next. And the current contract states that they can hold that carryover time for a period of 18 months, and that's been reduced to 1 year. So it tries to reflect that we want employees to use their time off in the current year, that when they earn it, but if they do carry some over, they need to use it within the next calendar year. And then the wage provision is listed at the end, where we have 4 years of wage increases, starting with 2021, a 2% increase, and then gradually getting a little more each year, and in the fourth year at 2.75%. One of the things that we did early on in the contract negotiation was kind of an open disclosure to the employees and the negotiating team about LCA's financial situation and the pandemic situation and some of the priorities that we needed to achieve. So we think that the contract generally reflects what those priorities were in terms of cost control for insurance benefits, the wages gradually increasing rather than being front loaded. We needed them to be lower in the first couple of years as we're implementing the terms of the settlement agreement with Allentown, and then the one LCA approach. So we've accomplished some, progress toward those items, I think, this year with this contract negotiation. There are a few other items, as I mentioned, about trying to clarify LCA's mission or have the contract reflect our work environment. And those are listed in the memo as well as throughout the contract. One example is we lifted out the entire education and training section that was in the contract previously and replaced it with what's currently in our employee manual, so that reflects across the whole organization and shows the commitment to employee training. And then, some other items which are maybe less substantial in terms of actions, but are important to us, about harassment and bullying in the workplace, stating our mission, focusing our mission on safe and reliable water services, and then some other items related to how we hire people on probationary periods and those sorts of items, which are common throughout the organization. So I went over it pretty quickly and tried to do it at a high level to capture the themes of the contract, hoping that the memo provided enough detail, but you also have the entire contract review if you had interest in seeing the language and how it all worked together. Before I move on to the employee manual changes, is there a discussion or questions about the SEIU contract?
Lisa, Ted here. I have a question which you probably already answered, but of course I've already forgotten it. Who represented the union in these negotiations? I mean, were there certain employees from the union?
Yes, there was
officials.
There was a committee made up of 4 union employees, and they were from each of the operating units, say, or most of the operating units. So, one from wastewater, one from the water plants, et cetera. And then the business agent for the union was there, and then their labor attorney as well. On the LCA side, really appreciate you kind of giving me the setup, Ted. John Parsons and Kathy Martin and I spent an awful lot of time together getting to know each other and talking about the negotiations and working through that. We've represented LCA along with our labor attorney from Kings Spry.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Yes.
Bieber, just one question. I noticed at the end you talked about that the contract's going to provide some additional flexibility for recruiting and retaining employees in key positions that have historically been difficult to fill. What are some of those positions that are these key positions that are historically difficult to fill? I'm just curious.
Within the SEIU group of employees, the treatment plant operators have been a challenge. At times, Kathy Martin has done a really fantastic job of recruiting in recent years, but historically finding treatment plant operators who were qualified and willing to work night shift has been a bit challenging. And then there's also some trade level positions that require some specific skill sets that are sometimes difficult to fill, and they require some time. So, specifically having the 180 days probationary period was really important to us to allow us to find employees, bring them in, but really test them to make sure that during that 180-day period, they're bringing to the table what we really need.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is Amir. A couple of questions for you. So first of all, let me start to saying that I have zero experience in the contract negotiation. So maybe this question is a little bit ignorant I'm asking. So our healthcare cost, is it negotiated annually, or this is for 3-4 years? How does that work?
For this contract,
Yes.
it is included in the contract itself what the price will be for all 4 years. With the caveat, the last year, the 4th year, so 2024, is just listed as a price to be determined but will not exceed X%. So the actual rate is provided for the first 3 years, and then the last year is to be determined but capped.
So does LCA has a contract for the health coverage for the next 3 or 4 years, or should be our annual cost?
It is. It's actually the health insurance is actually provided through the union, through their health insurance fund. So they determine the rate and provide that to us, and we pay the union for the cost for the employee coverage.
Okay.
So their costs are significantly lower than the cost that we pay for non-union employees insurance, because the non-union group is such a small group, and even though we're in a consortium with other utilities and municipal agencies, it's just not that large of a group, whereas the union group is very large and they're able to negotiate some pretty decent rates, and that's provided through the union.
Thank you.
And Amir, that only happened about what, 2 or 3 years ago that we made that switch?
No, that's been in place. I don't know how long prior to 2013, but it was part of the contract that came through the lease transition for the Allentown side.
Okay.
The reason I asked the question, because for the non-union, the way it works that every year, they said that the employees' share is 50% of the increase of the health benefits. So therefore, you're protecting yourself. If the cost was higher or lower, then your share always is 50% of the increase. So that's the way that for the non-union worker that I was aware of, it was working that way. That's the reason I asked the question. That are we protected if the rate went up 14% suddenly? Do we only have to, they are paying 4% and we have to pay the other, whatever 10% it comes?
Yeah, these rates are locked in for the 4 years, so there's no exposure in terms of the increase.
Okay. Does it make sense that the salary increase be tied to the safety performance?
It's currently not. It would be fantastic to be able to provide some incentive for safety or other measures if the board would choose, the staff would recommend. However, in the union environment, that is really not something that we can achieve, I think, realistically. So the union setup is for annual increases for all employees according to the schedule that's negotiated, and that's something that I don't think we'll be able to break from.
Okay, because if you look at most of our safety incident, maybe majority of them come from the operator and most likely union worker. So if one can create an incentive to improve the safety performance and tie to the salary, it would be great, but I do recognize the union negotiation. And that to other companies, much larger companies, the salary increase, they are tied to the safety performance. It is done. Maybe this union is different, but I can tell you for the bigger, larger planned operations, the annual increase is tied to the safety performance.
Yeah, I think if we wanted to do something like that, it would have to be in addition to the general increases. And that would have to be a financial decision of whether we could afford to do that. But, incentives for performance and safety in particular, I think are a great idea, but not aligned with how this union operates.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kevin. I think that's probably a separate subject, the tying of safety performance to compensation, because you got to be so careful you don't suddenly drive all your disclosing underground. People don't disclose safety incidents or report them properly because they are worried about upsetting some compensation parameter. So it has to be really carefully done if you're going to make that connection.
Agreed. Yep.
Liesl, I had a question for you. You mentioned education and training. Does LCA pay for folks to get licensed and their continuing education credits? And if they do get licensed, is there an incentive or bonus when they do get licensed? How does that all work?
We do pay for training and licensing and renewals and all of those things related to licensing and the continuing education that's required for that. That's for sure. There is not a specific incentive for achieving a license. However, it is kind of built into how the job descriptions and qualifications work. So a plan operator, for example, would be paid at one pay grade. I don't have them memorized. Let's say it's a 12, just off the top of my head, a pay grade 12. They would not be eligible to move to the next pay grade unless they had certain licenses in place. Or if a treatment plant level 2 operator became available, they would need to have the prerequisite licenses to be able to bid on that job. And there's certain other licenses, like your CDL licenses or other kinds of licensing that might be applicable to different jobs that follow a similar path. To be qualified for the next level job, you have to have it.
Okay. Yeah, and just to follow up on what Kevin and Amir said, I know I've seen some municipalities do like a small safety bonus where it wasn't necessarily tied to their hourly rate, but if they had a year or some period with perfect safety record or whatever, then there was some monetary bonus involved. Just not suggesting that, just saying that I know other folks have done that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the contract? Okay, then the next section of the memo describes some changes that we're recommending be made to the employee manual, sort of in concert with the SEIU contract being approved. The first relates to holidays and personal holidays, where currently the SEIU group has, let's see, my apologies. They have 8 holidays and 7 personal holidays. So the company holidays that are paid on the specific day, they have 8 of those. And then they have 7 additional personal holidays that they can use whenever they like according to schedule. So that's a total of 15 holidays, either company holidays or personal holidays. The non-union employees have 1 day less. So they have, and it's made up a little bit differently. They have 6 company holidays, pardon me, and 8 personal holidays. So the two company holidays that are missing from the non-union group are Martin Luther King Day and the day after Thanksgiving. What we're proposing to do is to make Martin Luther King Day a company holiday, and that would bring the non-union group up to 7 holidays. And then with the 8 personal days, it would even out to be 15 days total for all employees. So that's being recommended. And I just want to note that Martin Luther King Day is next Monday. And with the kind of the flow of information and schedules being what they are, we'd recommend that for 2021, Martin Luther King Day be honored as an additional personal day for non-union employees, because we don't think a week's time is enough to reschedule what everyone has planned for Monday. That's the first change that we're recommending, Martin Luther King Day for non-union employees. The second change relates to the carryover vacation. And I mentioned previously that in the negotiations with SEIU, they agreed to change the carryover time period from 18 months down to 1 year. And we'd like to do the same within the employee manual for all employees. And just to note that while that change is a change in the language, it really doesn't affect how the carryover actually works, because the carryover amounts are limited based on the program. So each year, employees may only carry over as much as they earn in that year. And so if they don't use it during the next calendar year, they really can't carry it over a second time into the following year to get the full 18 months. So in that way, it's already somewhat limited to the 1 year time period. And we just like to clarify that language and have the language reflect that it's 1 year and not 18 months for the carryover period. And then in the last change that we're recommending is just an addition of acknowledgement of our prescription safety glass program, which was developed last year and incorporated into the program or into the union contract. Similar to our safety shoe program, where we have designated vendors that employees may go and receive safety shoes, steel-toed shoes according to our specifications, and then they get paid through our program. We've found a supplier for prescription safety glasses that employees can go to if they work in a job that requires safety glasses. And so we wanted to make that program company-wide and add that to the employee manual as noted in the memo. Any questions on the recommended changes to the employee manual?
Lisa, Ted here.
Hi, Ted.
I have a question, and it's in the union contract. I don't know if that was the appropriate time to ask the question. However, I'm on page 31 under vacations. And I look down and see that after 15 years of service, you get 25 vacation days a year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And plus you get how many holidays?
The 8 holidays and 7 personal.
Okay, that's 8. That's 15 more days.
Yeah.
So that's 40 days a year.
Yeah.
That you're not working, you're paid.
That's correct.
Okay, well, I'm old, come from the day when you worked on an hourly rate basis. And this is the load that our customers are carrying. And I'm not suggesting we're out of line. I'm just suggesting it's at some point you reach a tipping point, I think, that you're, and again, I realize people value time off very often now more than they even value wages or earnings. But anyway, just a comment from an old guy. It's pretty dramatic that you get 40 days off a year plus weekends.
Yeah, it is a lot of time off. I acknowledge that. The non-union and SMART group has a similar vacation schedule. It's a little bit different. They have to work a little bit longer to get up to that level, but you eventually end up at the same place. for across the whole organization. It is fairly typical and in line with other public utilities, and how other water utilities and municipalities are structured. But I do acknowledge it's a lot of time off.
Thank you.
Mhm. The last item I just wanted to note is that the changes to the employee manual are also items that would impact our SMART union. And the SMART union has a contract that expires in 2022. So just as a matter of getting everything sort of incorporated together and having it all be put in the right places from the contract standpoint, we would expect to reach out to SMART and do a letter agreement of some kind, acknowledging that we're incorporating these changes into their benefits and provisions as well. So, without getting into great detail on all the language, which you certainly have available and can read, I wanted to just provide an overview and give you the feeling of how the negotiations went, and ask for questions or approval of the contract as well as the employee manual changes. I do want to note before any action is taken that the contract that you have in front of you is a draft, and there may be some minor tweaks to the language as the union is reviewing it and making sure that all the language properly reflects what was negotiated during contract negotiations. We know that there will be a couple of minor changes here and there, but nothing substantive has come up in the communication we've had with the union about this. So it would be in substantially the same form.
Yeah, Lisa, that's a good point, because there's a lot of drafting that occurred. That if there's going to be an approval, I would recommend that the CBA, the new CBA, be approved in a substantial form presented with such minor revisions, if any, as approved by the Chief Executive Officer in consultation with the solicitor. That way we don't get hamstrung by some minor tweaking that has to occur just to get the intent right. And that should be true, not just for the CBA, but for the employee manual and for any revisions to the SMART agreement. That way we can make sure the intent prevails as opposed to some formality.
Okay, anything more, Lisa?
That's all I have.
So, Michael, can you restate that, make that in the form of the motion for
Yes.
board members to?
Sure, and I think it should be done 3 separate motions, because there's really 3 separate agreements or documents that are issued. So the first one would be a motion to approve the new collective bargaining agreement with SEIU for the years 2021 through 2024 in the substantial form presented, with such minor revisions, if any, as approved by the Chief Executive Officer in consultation with the authority solicitor.
All right, sounds real good.
So moved.
Second.
That was motion by Dick and seconded by Norma. All right, any
Yes.
questions? All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, second motion.
Second motion would be to approve the proposed changes to the employee manual as presented in their substantial form with such minor revisions, if any, as approved by the Chief Executive Officer in consultation with the authority solicitor.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Norma, seconded by Scott. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion has Pass.
And then the last motion would be,
If I could I interject, Mike, that the on the last motion that you're suggesting for the SMART, for the discussion with SMART, we were anticipating just doing an exchange of letters that wouldn't normally require a board action. I just want to throw that out to you. If you feel it requires a board action, I'm fine with that. But the standard practice would be for a minor revision, that we would just do that through an exchange of letters.
I think that's fine. Whatever the prior practice that exists, it should be filed, actually. It's my opinion. So.
Okay.
So does that mean that motion is stricken then? And even though we approved it?
Oh, no. We haven't started the SMART motion.
Oh, okay. All right. We're on the third one then.
Yep.
Yeah,
So just the two motions, I think,
Okay.
are what we needed, or what we're asking.
All right. Sounds good. You got what you need then, right?
Thank you very much.
All right.
So we'll go ahead and let the union know that the board has approved the contract in substantially the form presented, and our understanding is that the union members will be reviewing the contract and ratifying on Thursday and Friday. They're kind of going through the same thing we are in terms of trying to do large meetings in a socially distanced and appropriate way, but still giving all the employees a chance to review all the details. So they're going to do that over 2 days later this week.
All right. Just as I want to start you on your minor modifications on page 38, the very third last line on that page, I think that the Article 32 should actually be Article 31.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
It's confusing.
Say it again. Which one? What's
on page 38?
Yes.
Under arbitration.
Yeah.
Third last line.
Mm-hmm.
Procedures, the grievance procedure set forth in Article 32, when Article 32 is actually arbitration. So I think it should be 31.
It is actually in the red line. It's 32 is crossed out, and 31
Nope.
and it's
The first.
There's
Both
two references.
Both places.
Ah, thank you.
All right.
I caught one, not the other one. Thank you.
That was Dick taught me well.
Hardly.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yep. Got that one.
All right. So moving on now, we don't have any items under water or wastewater, and we are at the item number 6, monthly project updates. Report was included.
Yeah. So start off the year with just one item on the agenda, but we're going to fill up your agenda for the rest of the month. We had just highlight a couple things that are coming up at our second meeting in January on the 25th. We do have a few items we're going to bring forward. First is the customer relief fund discussion that we've been having over the past several months. We expect to have a formal proposal to bring to the board at the next meeting for your consideration.
May I make a comment on that?
Certainly.
Recently, I read in the newspaper where the mayor listed a series of accomplishments throughout the last year or whatever.
Yes.
And one of them was to state that the authority and the city have reached agreements on the water business, etc., and that he obtained $400,000 to administer that from the city's viewpoint. I think we should ask him to provide some percentage of that towards the elimination of overdue bills.
We can certainly talk with the city compliance office about this, about that issue. And Jenny and Brian are on the call so they can heard your comments directly. I will say that the use of the $400,000 was discussed pretty deeply during the negotiations, and likely to be required for other city expenses. But we can certainly talk about the city's participation in our customer relief fund program and how that would look.
Thank you.
Yep. So that'll be a detailed and I'm sure very exciting discussion at our next meeting. We also are working on our 2021 goals and vision and strategic planning efforts for 2021. I'm not sure if we'll be ready for the next meeting, but if not, it'll certainly be early February that we are able to discuss those. We also have a couple of items coming up later this month in the wastewater arena as we get started with the long-term Act 537 planning effort and the flow metering work that's kicking off this month, and then the flow data controls that we need to put in place. So we'll bring that forward to you at the next meeting, as well as a change order for our Sand Spring wastewater treatment plant upgrade, which Chuck will talk about at the next meeting as well. So lots of stuff on the agenda for the next meeting, and invite any questions on any of the information items in that report.
Lisa, I have a question for you. On page 3 of the monthly project update, the first thing is water main replacement program cycle.
Yeah.
Which was on hold for a while. Is that being studied or looked at any differently with regard to the priority for, say, the main in 17th Street or the main over in Devonshire, where we've had the major leaks? Or are you doing anything differently to look at that, and potentially that might be on a replacement program cycle sooner than later if needed?
We've talked about that internally. At this point, we haven't received a final report from Gannett Fleming on the evaluation of the line from the breakout at 17th and Walnut, the Huckleberry Ridge transmission line. So we don't have any specific recommendation in terms of the 2021 cycle, but certainly would incorporate whatever findings into our capital plan process as we move forward. John or Chuck, if you have anything you'd like to add on that question?
Not really. That says it.
Chuck, you're on mute if you're trying to chime in.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to add real quick that the prioritization for this year's project was previously approved by the city. We are finalizing design right now, but we will certainly include whatever Gannett finds in their study to adjust the prioritization for next year's project, possibly to include some of the pipe that broke. So the answer is yes, we will include that in our prioritization.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we move on to agenda item number 9, staff comments. Lisa, you said you had some?
Just a very brief comment. I believe all of you on the call are aware of the major main break we experienced during the last year of 2020 on Devonshire Road by the Mac building. That was a significant event for us for a number of reasons. It was a large 36-inch transmission line that affected a large portion of Southside Allentown in one way or another. And also our second boil advisory being issued within the city of Allentown in 2020. After many years, possibly decades, I'm not sure, without boil advisories, it was a very significant event for us. And at our next meeting, it didn't make its way onto the report that we just reviewed because it was so timely that it happened. But at our next meeting, we will present an emergency declaration for board consideration, a retroactive emergency declaration. the response on that particular main break was really very challenging. And I'd like to just give some acknowledgments to some people on the call and people who are not on the call also. John and the operations group, and notably the folks at the DNC group, the water distribution and sewer line maintenance group in Allentown, really put forth a tremendous effort to very quickly respond to that situation, and not only to respond to it, but in an environment where more than half the crew was out on quarantine due to the pandemic. So working on a very small group with a very small group of employees, including the supervisors on their time off, their vacation time, coming in to address that situation. They did a fantastic job of responding. There's also several people on the call, including Sue Sampson and Mark Bowen and Phil DePoe and others who really jumped in. Andrew Moore jumped in to help us make the decisions about the boil advisory and define the areas that needed to be addressed, get customer communication out, and do our very best to reach out to the city of Allentown and its citizens to make sure that the information was out there during a holiday week when no one wanted to be dealing with something like that. So we're happy to be able to get the line back in service and the boil advisory lifted before the end of the year, and start 2021 with all customers in service with safe drinking water. So that's all I really have to say today. I wanted to acknowledge it and give some acknowledgement to folks who were really responsible for responding, and let you know that we will be back on that topic at our next meeting, most likely, with a request for retroactive emergency declaration.
On that topic, I got the sense that there was a second failure in that same pit after the first one was repaired. And specifically, if you can address at the next meeting, safety issues, if anything we could have done differently. I'd hate to have somebody down the hole there and have a second cave in from the soil. So anyway, it was just kind of came to my mind as I got that report, and I had some concerns about the safety of our personnel.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. And just to let you know that next week we do have planned, just looking for the date, not finding it. Oh, on Tuesday the 19th, we have planned a pretty large group internal meeting to do a lessons learned after action review type of session to go through how we responded and what we learned from it, and what went well and what didn't go well, and how we can improve. So we'll definitely be looking at that aspect of it.
Obviously, it was a heroic job to get it done and accomplished in such a short period of time, but
yeah,
always good to look at lessons learned.
I have to say, he's not on the call, but Jason Gruber is the manager down at in that department. I believe many of you have met Jason. As he was dealing with the pandemic and having more than half of his team out on quarantine due to the pandemic, he had the foresight to get a contractor on board to help us with emergencies, knowing that he was going to be short-staffed for that week. And so our contractor that helped us with this repair was already on call and waiting to help us when it happened. So want to give him recognition for being proactive and dealing with it with the resources that he had available.
Lisa, since you mentioned quarantine, is everybody off now? Off quarantine?
Everyone who was off that week is back to work, but we have some new people who are off now. So this is an evolving situation, and we're doing our best to keep everyone separated and working safely, but at times we do have to work together. And so if someone's exposed, and that means a coworker is also exposed, we're taking the necessary steps to keep people out of work and protected.
Hey, Lisa, I don't know if you know the answer to this right now, but I was just curious, was the pipe under Devonshire Road that failed the same type of pipe in 17th Street, the class 50 thinner walled ductile iron, or was it completely different?
John?
It was completely different. It was built in, I have the notes right here. It was installed in 1936. So it wasn't even ductile. So it was,
cast iron.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Solicitor comments?
I'm assuming that there were some appointments to the board beginning of this year. Was there?
Oh gosh.
Should we identify who that was in the minutes and stuff?
We actually need to look at that. We did have we do have some board members whose terms would have expired at the end of the year, but we need to find those names and work with the county on reappointments. So we don't have anything for
I think there's only one board member that expired as of the end of the year.
Yeah, but they would continue to serve until they're reappointed. But definitely need to get that ball rolling with the county.
Yeah, just to keep, so we know, how much time's left, just to keep everything in order.
Yeah.
And then I guess one of the meetings in February, there'll be reorganization of the board.
Yeah.
On the bylaws.
And Norma, I'll be asking you again to poll the board members for interest in officer positions on the board. If you would do that again, too, please. But you don't have to do that until we do that in the second board meeting of February.
Yeah.
Right. I'll just put this out there, Brian, but one of the boards that I'm on, because of the pandemic and the Zoom meetings, we chose and we voted on to maintain the current board as is for at least an extra year, so that there was continuity for the both the executive committee and the board. I had, decided that that's what we would do. So I don't know if you want to take that into consideration.
I have a tickler item to reach out to the county at the beginning of the year also about the reappointments, but also we're with our last charter extension, the county requested that we do presentations to the county commissioners on various issues that they're interested in, environmental and financial issues. So when I reach out to the county for scheduling and discussion, I can certainly ask about that as well, but need to just identify who's up for reappointment and whether that person would like to maintain their seat on the board before we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But also what we decided to do was maintain the officers.
Oh, okay.
So the president of the board, secretary, etc., we said that we would keep those officers at least during the time of the pandemic. So I'm just putting that out there. That's one of the boards that I am on. So the board can let me know if they want to continue with our current officers or if they would like me to request anyone on the board if they're interested in any of the officer positions.
So anybody can get back to Norma on any feelings they might have about board officer positions. Any of them.
Hi, Norma. This is Dick Alstay as secretary.
All right.
Okay. Let's see. Any public comments now and on any topics?
I have nothing.
Brian, this is Jenny. A quick comment. Brian, am I talking over you?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate that this city wants to say that it was an excellent response to that water main break, especially as everyone stated during the holiday and with COVID going on. And it just highlights the continued partnership between the city and FCA with that coordination and cooperation. Bad situation better because of all the good work. And I did have a question for Liesl. I just wanted to be reminded the customer relief fund that was going to also be extended to the suburban division ratepayers as well.
That's correct.
Okay, great. I think that's everything I have right now. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Jenny. All right, any further business? Hearing none, then this meeting is adjourned. We do have an executive session following this on potential litigation. It is now 1:01. About at 1:10, we reconvene in that other Zoom meeting that we received the information from Lisa on previous to this. So we'll see you in about 9 minutes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, bye.